Poland reveals itself not through spectacle alone, but through landscapes and cities shaped by resilience, memory, and the quiet force of nature. From medieval towns preserved across centuries to mountain ranges carved by ice and time, every region carries a distinct atmosphere that feels deeply connected to both history and land. Along the Baltic coast, winds move endlessly across shifting shores and ancient ports once linked to the wider world through trade and exploration. Silence, distance, and changing weather reshape the experience of travel itself. Rivers cut through old cities, lakes reflect untouched horizons, and villages remain suspended within rhythms untouched by modern urgency. Is rarely loud or immediate. It unfolds gradually through detail, atmosphere, and the enduring presence of time. This is a journey across landscapes where history survives not as memory alone, but as something still living within the world around it. Hel Peninsula extends into the Baltic Sea like a thin and fragile strip of land, suspended between two endlessly shifting worlds. In some places, only a few hundred meters wide, it creates a striking divide between the calm waters of Puck Bay and the restless energy of the open sea. Across more than 35 kilometers, dunes, forests, and coastlines are continuously reshaped by powerful winds moving in from the Baltic. Pine trees bend beneath the pressure of salty air, while long beaches disappear into pale horizons where sky and sea seem to merge together. The landscape feels temporary and alive, as though nature is still in the process of creating it. Standing here, the presence of the sea is impossible to ignore. Not violent or dramatic, but steady, immense, and deeply consuming. Morskie Oko lies hidden deep within the Tatra mountains, surrounded by towering peaks that rise sharply above its still and reflective waters. At nearly 1,400 meters above sea level, it remains one of the largest and most iconic glacial lakes in Poland. Its crystal clear surface mirrors the jagged skyline above with such precision that the boundary between mountain and reflection almost disappears. Reaching the lake requires a long journey through forests and mountain paths, gradually leaving behind the noise and movement of civilization. With every step, the landscape becomes quieter, more elemental, and increasingly detached from the outside world. When the lake finally appears, it does not overwhelm through grandeur alone, but through a silence defined by balance, clarity, and stillness. Pieniny Mountains rise along the border of Poland and Slovakia with a gentler, more intimate landscape than the towering Tatras. Formed from limestone, their ridges and cliffs have been shaped over time into soft yet distinct forms. At their center, the Dunajec River winds through a narrow gorge, carving one of the most scenic passages in the region. From viewpoints like Trzy Korony, the river can be seen bending quietly between forested slopes and rocky walls. Protected within Pieniny National Park, the area remains calm and well preserved. Traditional wooden rafts still drift along the river, continuing a centuries-old practice led by local Highlanders. The journey moves slowly, allowing the landscape to unfold in silence and detail. In the Pieniny Mountains, the beauty lies not in scale, but in balance, where river, forest, and stone exist in quiet harmony. Zakopane lies at the edge of the Tatra Mountains, where human life meets a dramatic alpine environment. Traditional wooden architecture reflects a unique Highland culture, shaped by isolation and resilience. Towering peaks rise above the town, drawing visitors into landscapes that shift with the seasons. Winter, snow transforms the region into a vast white expanse of silence and movement. In summer, green valleys open beneath wide skies, inviting exploration and reflection. Here, nature is not a backdrop. It is a constant presence that shapes everything around it. Góry Stołowe rise in southwestern Poland with a form unlike most mountain landscapes. Instead of sharp peaks, these table mountains are defined by flat plateaus and sheer sandstone cliffs shaped over millions of years by erosion. Wind and water have carved the rock into unusual formations, creating labyrinths of narrow passages and towering stone blocks. In places like Gdańsk, the terrain becomes a maze where light and shadow shift constantly between the Suhur. Protected within Stołowe Mountains National Park, the region preserves a landscape that feels both surreal and quiet. At viewpoints such as Szczeliniak Wielki, rising to 919 meters, wide panoramas stretch across forests and distant valleys. The scale here is not overwhelming, but intricate, inviting exploration rather than awe. In Góry Stołowe, nature reveals its artistry in detail, where stone, time, and silence come together in perfect balance. The Górze Mountains rise softly across southern Poland, with a landscape defined more by openness, rhythm, and atmosphere than by dramatic elevation. Unlike the sharp and rugged ranges nearby, these mountains unfold through rolling ridges and wide forested slopes that feel calm and continuous. Dense spruce and beech forests cover much of the terrain, occasionally opening into clearings known as Polana, where sweeping views reveal distant peaks of the Tatras on the horizon. These natural meadows, shaped through centuries of pastoral life, create a quiet balance between wilderness and human presence. Protected within Gdańsk National Park, the region remains one of the least disturbed mountain environments in the country. Shepherd huts still stand scattered across the hillsides, preserving traces of traditions passed carefully between generations. Trails wind gently through forests and across open ridgelines, encouraging slow exploration rather than physical challenge. In the Gdańsk Mountains, the experience is not centered on reaching a summit, but on immersion where silence, distance, and the rhythm of nature shape the journey itself. Vistula River, Wisła, flows across Poland as the longest and most defining river in the country. Stretching over 1,000 kilometers from the southern mountains to the Baltic Sea. It begins high in the Carpathian Mountains, where narrow streams gather strength before forming a steady, continuous current. Along its journey, the river passes through cities such as Krakow, Warsaw, and Gdańsk, shaping not only the landscape, but the history and identity of the nation itself. Its waters have carried trade, culture, and movement for centuries, connecting regions that might otherwise remain distant. In some places, the Vistula flows wide and calm, reflecting open skies and quiet shores. In others, it narrows and moves with quiet determination. Vistula River, Wisła, flows across Poland as the longest and most defining river in the country. It remains constant, a thread linking past and present. Walking along its banks, there is a sense that the river is always moving forward, yet never truly leaving anything behind. In the Vistula, Poland is not just seen, it is carried, shaped, and remembered. Narew River flows quietly through northeastern Poland, forming one of the most unusual river landscapes in Europe. Often called a braided river, it does not follow a single channel, but spreads into a network of shifting waterways, weaving through wetlands and open marshes. This creates a vast, ever-changing mosaic of water and land, where boundaries are never fully defined. In places like Narew National Park, the river becomes a sanctuary for bird life, with countless species moving across its quiet, shallow waters. Unlike powerful mountain rivers, the Narew moves slowly, almost imperceptibly, shaped more by time than force. Grasses and reeds rise from the water, bending gently with the current and wind. Wooden paths and observation towers allow visitors to move through the landscape without disturbing its balance. Here, silence is not empty. It is alive with subtle movement and sound. The Narew does not carve the land dramatically. Instead, it dissolves into it. Blending water and earth into a single, continuous form. In this quiet complexity, the river reveals a different kind of beauty, one that is not immediate, but unfolds gradually through patience, observation, and stillness. Tatra mountains rise along the border of Poland and Slovakia like a jagged wall shaped by ice and time. Though part of the vast Carpathian Mountains, their sharp granite peaks feel far more dramatic than their size suggests. At their highest point, Górkowski Szczyt reaches 2,655 meters, rising above valleys carved by ancient glaciers. These valleys cradle clear alpine lakes, including Morskie Oko, where still waters reflect the surrounding peaks like a mirror. On the Polish side, Tatra National Park protects a landscape where forests gradually give way to open alpine terrain. While wildlife moves quietly through this environment, from mountain goats navigating steep cliffs to hidden creatures deep within the woods. Trails lead across ridges and valleys, drawing travelers into a world where silence replaces noise and distance reshapes perception. Weather shifts quickly here, often turning clear skies into mist, adding to the mountain's sense of unpredictability. At the base of the range, Zakopane reflects a culture deeply connected to the mountains. Traditional wooden houses and long-standing customs reveal a way of life shaped by nature rather than modern pace. Across all seasons, the Tatras remain constant, vast, quiet, and deeply grounding. They do not overwhelm with scale alone, but with a presence that feels timeless and quietly powerful. Gdańsk emerges along the Baltic coastline like a city carved by salt air, commerce, and the weight of centuries. Rows of colorful merchant houses rise beside the Motława River, their reflections trembling softly across dark, moving water. Gothic towers dominate the skyline, while narrow stone streets preserve the atmosphere of a once powerful Hanseatic port that connected northern Europe through trade and influence. Nearly destroyed during World War II, the city was rebuilt with extraordinary care, restoring not only historic facades, but also the spirit that once defined it. Today, every street corner carries a quiet sense of endurance, where memory survives through architecture, detail, and daily life. The Baltic Sea remains inseparable from the city itself, shaping its rhythm, identity, and atmosphere with a presence that is constant, yet never overwhelming. Karpacz rests quietly beneath the towering Karkonosze Mountains, where forests and peaks rise in slow and layered formations. Above the town stands Śnieżka, the highest summit in the range at 1,603 meters, often hidden behind drifting clouds and sudden mountain weather. Dense spruce and beech forests climb the slopes before gradually fading into exposed alpine terrain, shaped by wind, snow, and cold. Wooden homes and mountain lodges reflect generations of adaptation to an environment both beautiful and demanding. Trails extend outward into landscapes that feel welcoming at first, yet increasingly wild the farther they continue. In Carpatch, civilization never fully separates from wilderness, and nature always remains close enough to be felt. Kazimierz Dolny unfolds beside the Vistula River with a quiet elegance shaped by history, art, and landscape. Its Renaissance buildings, decorated with ornate facades and delicate details, surround a central square that still carries the atmosphere of centuries past. Beyond the town, rolling hills carved by erosion form, winding ravines and soft gullies that give the region an almost painted appearance. For generations, Kazimierz Dolny thrived as an important trading point along the river, connecting distant cultures through commerce and movement. Today, the pace feels slower and more reflective, defined less by activity and more by atmosphere. Walking through its streets feels less like discovering a destination and more like entering a preserved fragment of another era. Krakow rises along the Vistula River as one of Europe's most enduring centers of culture, memory, and identity. At the heart of the city lies Rynek Główny, an immense medieval square that has remained alive with activity for more than 7 centuries. Above the river, Wawel Castle stands as a lasting symbol of royal power and the deep roots of Polish history. Unlike many cities across the region, Krakow survived much of the devastation of World War II, allowing its historical fabric to remain remarkably intact. Its churches, courtyards, and narrow streets carry layers of memory accumulated across countless generations. Here, history does not feel distant or preserved behind glass. It exists naturally within the rhythm of everyday life. Masuria stretches across northeastern Poland as an immense landscape shaped by water, forests, and the slow passage of time. With more than 2,000 interconnected lakes, the region forms one of the largest freshwater systems anywhere in Europe. Rivers and canals weave quietly between wooded shores, creating endless natural pathways across the landscape. Its vast scale creates a rare feeling of openness, where distance is measured more by waterways and horizons than by roads or cities. Wildlife flourishes throughout the region, supported by an environment that remains remarkably untouched and calm. Masuria is defined less by famous landmarks and more by atmosphere expansive, peaceful, and deeply restorative. Mikołajki rests at the heart of the Masurian Lake District, where water shapes both the landscape and the rhythm of daily life. Often called the Pearl of the Masurian Lakes, the town connects a vast network of waterways stretching across countless kilometers. Sailboats glide slowly across calm surfaces, moved by shifting winds rather than urgency or speed. During summer, travelers gather here beneath open skies and beside reflective waters that seem to extend endlessly toward the horizon. Even at its busiest, however, the town never fully loses its sense of calm and simplicity. In Mikołajki, life follows the rhythm of nature itself, where time feels slower and movement feels intentional. Nowłóki remains quiet and largely untouched, shaped more by changing seasons than by modern development. Fields stretch outward in measured patterns toward forests that form a distant and unbroken horizon. The village itself is small and understated, marked by few signs of expansion or transformation. Daily life continues here with a simplicity that feels increasingly rare in the modern world. There are no grand attractions or famous landmarks demanding attention, only routine, continuity, and stillness. Within this silence, time seems to move differently, slower and more deliberate than elsewhere. Poznań stands among the oldest and most historically significant cities in Poland, shaped by centuries of trade, culture, and political change. Its old market square is surrounded by colorful townhouses and centered around an elegant Renaissance town hall. Each day at noon, the city's famous mechanical goats emerge above the clock tower, continuing a tradition preserved across generations. For centuries, Poznań has served as an important crossroads connecting regions, ideas, and cultures throughout Central Europe. Modern energy now moves through the city's streets, yet its foundations remain deeply rooted in history and identity. It is a place where progress never completely separates itself from the memory of the past. Sopot faces the Baltic Sea with an atmosphere of openness, balance, and understated elegance. Its famous wooden pier extends more than 500 meters into the water, reaching toward uninterrupted horizons of sea and sky. The coastline is defined by broad beaches and soft shifting light that changes constantly throughout the day. Unlike industrial harbor cities nearby, Sopot feels relaxed, timeless, and almost detached from urgency. Here, life moves according to waves, coastal winds, and the slow rhythm of passing seasons. Sopot is not defined by intensity or spectacle, but by calmness, openness, and quiet harmony with the sea. Torun rises along the banks of the Vistula River as one of the most remarkably preserved medieval cities in all of Europe. Its red brick Gothic architecture has survived for centuries with extraordinary continuity, creating a historical landscape that feels almost untouched by time. Recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the city offers a rare opportunity to experience an urban environment whose medieval character remains fully intact. Torun is also known as the birthplace of Nicolaus Copernicus, linking the city forever to one of humanity's greatest transformations in understanding the universe. Walking through its narrow streets and ancient squares feels less like observing history and more like existing within it. Every tower, wall, and courtyard carries the weight of memory, preserved not as a monument alone, but as a living part of the city itself. Warsaw rises from the past as a powerful symbol of destruction, endurance, and renewal. During World War II, nearly 85% of the city was reduced to ruins, leaving behind little of its original structure. Yet through extraordinary reconstruction efforts, the old town was rebuilt in meticulous detail, using historical paintings, records, and surviving fragments. Today, Warsaw stands as a UNESCO-recognized example of restoration carried out with remarkable precision and determination. Modern skyscrapers now shape the skyline beside carefully reconstructed streets, creating a striking contrast between past and present. Warsaw is defined not by what disappeared, but by the resilience and identity rebuilt from its ruins. Across Poland, every landscape tells a different story, from windswept Baltic shores and medieval streets to silent forests and mountain valleys shaped over thousands of years. Some places reveal the endurance of history, rebuilt from destruction with extraordinary care, while others remain untouched, defined only by nature and time. Together, they create a country where contrasts exist in quiet harmony, where modern cities rise beside preserved traditions, and wilderness begins only moments beyond human settlement. What makes Poland unforgettable is not only the beauty of its scenery, but the atmosphere carried within it, calm, resilient, and deeply grounded. From the still waters of Masuria to the granite peaks of the Tatras, every destination leaves behind a feeling that lingers long after the journey ends. And perhaps that is the true character of Poland. Not a place that demands attention instantly, but one that slowly reveals its depth the longer you remain within it.